silly push from my girlfriends to hook up with the guy at the bar, ruined my 15-year-long marriage. I know how this is going to sound. And no, I'm not proud of it. I'm not writing this to get pity or talk anyone into forgiving me. I just need to say it, all of it, because it's one thing to ruin your own life. It's another thing entirely to look back and realize you had everything you needed, and still you reached for something else. Something stupid and meaningless, and all because of a little push. But before I get into that, I need to explain how I got there. My name is Nina, female 41, and until a few months ago, I've been married to Corey, male 42, for 15 years. We met in college. I was 24, majoring in psychology, but still unsure about what I wanted to do. He was a year older, studying computer science, calm as hell, always put together. We got together pretty quickly. I'd had chaotic relationships before Corey, guys who made me chase them, guys who made me feel like I had to earn their attention. So being with someone like him, someone who didn't play games, it felt like a relief. We moved in together 2 months after graduating, got married a year after that. It all happened fast, but it didn't feel rushed. At least, not then. In the early years, I loved our life. We'd wake up together, make breakfast, bicker over what podcast to play while driving to work. We didn't have a lot of money, but we made it work. Date usually nights meant takeout and cheap wine, but we made it work. And things stayed like that for years. He was steady, thoughtful. I mean, even just a few months back, everything was still normal. He kept things running without me ever having to ask. Bills, repairs, birthday reminders, oil changes. He remembered the stuff I always forgot. Sometimes I wondered if I relied on him too much, or if I took advantage of all his kindness. But it was easy to let him take the lead, and he never made me feel guilty for it. He was so perfect with our daughter Tessa. Things changed after that. Our attention turned toward parenting, and suddenly our lives were full of sleepless nights, daycare, doctor's visits. And Corey was incredible. He was the kind of dad every mom wants their kid to have. Gentle, but firm. I loved him even more for that. But somewhere along the line, I think I started loving him differently. Not less, just differently. It's hard to explain, but I'll try. After Tessa turned 10, things settled into this rhythm that didn't really include us anymore. Everything was about work, parenting, planning for the future. We weren't fighting, we weren't unhappy, but we weren't really connected either. It was like we were running beside each other instead of together, sharing space, not intimacy. And I don't mean just sex, though that had slowed down too. I mean the little things. That stuff faded slowly and quietly until it kind of felt like we were just a step above strangers, friends who lived together. It's hard to notice something disappearing when it happens gradually, but once it's gone, the silence is deafening. We never really talked about it. I think we both just assumed that we'd circle back to each other once life slowed down, and we'd get back to how things were. But life didn't slow down. It just kept moving. By the time Tessa left in middle school, I barely recognized myself in our relationship. I felt invisible in my own house. Corey was still kind, still helpful, still Corey, but I started resenting how unchanged he was, like he hadn't even noticed how far apart we'd grown. It felt like I should have done something to fix it. He took care of everything else. Why couldn't he take care of this? Help our marriage? I started wondering if he was bored too, if he stayed because it was comfortable. If I was just the other half of a routine neither of us knew how to break. I didn't talk to anyone about it, not even my friends. I felt stupid for even thinking about it. Like, how do you complain about a husband who still folds your laundry and keeps your gas tank full? How do you explain that something was missing without sounding selfish? But the more I tried to bury it, the more it clawed its way out. And then came the girls' trip. At first, Corey was hesitant about me being away, him and Tessa, even if it was just for a few days, but I managed to talk him into it by telling him that it was something I really needed. The trip wasn't anything extravagant, just 3 nights at a decent hotel in another city, somewhere not too far, but far enough to feel like we were away. It was me, Rachel, Jada, and Leanne. We'd been friends since our 20s, though we'd all kind of drifted and regrouped in waves over the years. Rachel was the loud one. She'd been divorced for 3 years and made it a point to say never again anytime marriage came up. Jada was always single and ready for a good time. And then there was Leanne, the only other one married, but her relationship was the kind that made you wonder why she stayed at all. I was the stable one, the good wife, the mother, a caretaker through and through, the one with the most years under her belt. At least that's how they saw me. "You're like the mom of the group," Jada had said once. And I'd laughed, but something about it stuck. I didn't want to be the mom, not in that way. Not the one who was always rolling her eyes or sitting things out or reminding people when to call it a night. I wanted to be fun. I wanted to be seen as something other than reliable. It seemed like a boring title to hold. I wanted something different. Before Corey, I had been fun, or at least reckless. I'd had a whole phase in my early 20s that most people don't know about. Hookups, party nights, drunken flings that didn't even last till morning. I wasn't wild in a dramatic way. I just didn't care much about consequences. I was fearless. Then I met Corey, and suddenly things that used to seem exciting started to look exhausting. I didn't need chaos anymore. I didn't need the chase. Suddenly there was so much that was more important, and Corey was easy. Calm. So I let that part of me fade. But being with the girls again, unfiltered, half drunk, dressed up and talking like we were 25 again, it brought something out of me I wasn't expecting. I laughed too loud. I flirted with the waiter. I ordered shots like I didn't have work in 3 days, and none of it felt wrong. It just felt like I'd stepped into an old version of myself and forgot just how much I used to like her. The first night was tame. We had dinner, a few drinks, went back to the hotel to gossip in sweatpants. I told stories about Tessa. They teased me about Corey, called him Mr. Predictable. Nothing nasty, just jokes. But I noticed how quiet I got when they asked if we still had sex regularly. I dodged the question and changed the subject. The second night, we went out to a rooftop bar. It was packed. Loud music, people everywhere. The kind of place I hadn't been in over a decade. At first, I felt awkward. Overdressed but underconfident. Like I didn't belong there anymore. But then Rachel handed me a drink and said to stop being the responsible one for once and to just enjoy myself. So I did. I drank. I danced. I let the music drown out the voice in my head that usually tells me to tone it down. And then I saw him. He was standing at the bar talking to the bartender. He was very handsome and he definitely knew it. He caught me staring, smiled like he was used to it, and then looked away, which of course only made me stare more. It was just some innocent looking, ogling, if I'm being honest. I wasn't going to do anything about it or entertain it, but then my friends noticed me staring and things changed. They encouraged me to go talk to him. They were cheering and hollering and egging me on, claiming that talking to a man wasn't a crime and that my marriage to Corey wasn't a prison. They weren't serious, not really. I think at that point it was just harmless teasing. But then he came over and introduced himself. His name was Luca, and he was in town for work. He bought us a round of drinks, made small talk with the group, then slowly started focusing more on me. I shouldn't have, but I let him. I don't know what I thought I was doing. I wasn't blackout drunk. I wasn't confused. I was fully aware of every choice I was making, and I still kept choosing wrong. We talked for almost an hour. He asked me what I did, where I lived, if I had kids. I told him I had a daughter. I didn't mention Corey. He didn't ask. After a bit, my friends pulled me to the side and asked me if I wanted some space to talk to him alone. I should have said no, but then I looked over at Luca, still standing at the bar, watching me like he already knew I'd say yes, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years, desired, excited, dangerous. So I walked back over, I smiled, and I asked him if he wanted to get some air. I didn't plan to sleep with him. I really didn't. I didn't go on that trip looking for an affair or some kind of reckless escape from my marriage, but once it started, I didn't try to stop it either. That night talking with Luca, it was supposed to be just some silly fun, something stupid I could laugh about in the morning with my friends, half ashamed, half proud. But then I followed him outside, and once we were alone, everything shifted. He lit a cigarette and offered me one. I said no because I hadn't smoked since college. He laughed and tucked the pack away. I should have said goodnight then. I should have gone back inside, found the girls, and gone to sleep. But I didn't. Instead, I asked him if he was staying at the hotel. He said he was staying at another one too far away. I knew what the conversation implied, but still I didn't stop him when he grabbed my hand and led me away. The sex wasn't romantic. It wasn't sweet or gentle. It was fast, hungry, kind of clumsy, and absolutely what I wanted. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about laundry or grocery lists or PTA meetings. I wasn't worrying about whether I was too loud or if I was being too selfish. I was just in my body again, and I felt wanted. It was amazing. I didn't stay the night. I left out and made the short trek back to the hotel. I slipped into the room and went to bed once I was sure that. The next morning I told myself it was done. One stupid night. That was it. But I couldn't stop thinking about him. The way he touched me, the way he looked at me, and the way he made me feel was something I hadn't felt in years. I thought maybe it would wear off. It wasn't like I had feelings for him or anything. But later that day, while the girls were at brunch and half the table was nursing hangovers, Luca texted me. I had forgotten that I'd even given him my number. He asked me if I was up for some more fun before I went home. I stared at the message for a long time. I told myself not to answer. I told myself it was over, that I'd gotten it out of my system, that I loved Corey and none of this was worth it. But then I started typing. One thing led to another, and I ended up meeting Luca again that night. We spent time together at the bar, and then we went down to the hotel swimming pool to talk while we put our feet in the water. That was when I found out that he was a few years younger than me. That should have immediately had me taking a step back from the whole situation, but unfortunately, it did the opposite. I felt confident and sexy because I'd managed to get with someone younger. He wasn't underage or anything. He was about 29, making me 11 years older. Not exactly the most scandalous thing in the world, but still pretty controversial. And that made me feel like what I'd been wanting to feel for a while now. Wild and fun. I was throwing caution to the wind and doing something reckless regardless of my responsibilities. That was why I leaned over and kissed him, even though I had told myself that it was just a one-time thing. He kissed me back, and things got heavy between us until one of the workers came to tell us that the pool was closing. I should have taken that as a sign to call it a night and head back, but I didn't. Once again, I followed him up to his hotel room. The second time was better, slower, more confident. There was less fumbling, less rushed energy. We knew what to expect, and I let myself enjoy it without all the guilt crowding my chest. I let myself laugh, flirt, be someone I hadn't been in forever, someone shameless, someone selfish, and once again, I didn't stay. We had our flight to catch in the morning, so I left, and immediately I got back to my room, I deleted his number. Sure that I was done for good now that I was going back home and would see Corey in just a few hours. We went home the next morning. I kissed Corey when I walked in the door, told him I missed him. He smiled and asked how the trip was, and I lied straight to his face. So easily it scared me. I couldn't stop thinking about Luca. Well, it wasn't about him exactly. It was about what he unlocked inside me. It was about how he made me feel about myself. That was all it ever was. In the days that followed, my thoughts were consumed with him and our nights together. But as I spent more time with Corey and Tessa, the guilt set in. It was like I suddenly realized what I'd put at stake for some meaningless fling, and Corey never changed. He trusted me completely, and that made it worse. I thought I was in control. I thought I could cheat and still go back to the life I'd had. But the fear only made me paranoid, constantly looking over my shoulder and hoping the truth about the girls' trip never came to light. I thought I could have both, be wild and reckless on that trip and still keep my life. But I was about to find out the hard way that I couldn't. Things didn't fall apart immediately. It probably would have been easier if it did. About a day before it happened, I noticed something strange. He wasn't cold exactly, but he wasn't warm either. He suddenly wasn't affectionate anymore and didn't touch me like he used to. No hand on the small of my back while I washed dishes. No kiss on the shoulder while I lay in bed scrolling. Nothing. It was almost like he was avoiding me. I couldn't understand it, and it just made me feel worse. You have to understand just how constant Corey's affection was for alarm bells to instantly go off the second there was even a slight change in his behavior. At first, I tried to rationalize it. I spent the night telling myself that he was busy, stressed, maybe he was getting sick. I told myself all the excuses that I could think of because I couldn't come to terms with my suspicions. I didn't want to accept a reality where Corey somehow found out about what happened, so I pretended like I didn't notice anything. But then everything went horribly wrong the next day. I think a part of me knew that something was horribly wrong even before I came home that night and found the house too quiet. No TV, No clanging dishes. No Tessa's voice echoing through her bedroom while she talked on the phone. Just silence. That was the first thing I noticed. The second was Corey, staring at me and sitting on the couch, still in his work clothes. I felt a cocktail of emotions. Dread, dear, guilt. Everything in my body was warning me that whatever came next would not be good. I asked where Tessa was, already uneasy. Something about the way Corey was sitting made me feel sick. He didn't even turn to look at me when I walked in, just kept his eyes on the floor like he was bracing himself. He said she was with his parents. I asked why, confused, and that's when he finally looked up at me and said that we needed to talk. No emotion in his voice. My stomach dropped. He stood up slowly, grabbed his phone from the coffee table, and held it out toward me. No build-up, no explanation, no dramatic lead-in. Just held it there like I already knew what I was about to see. I took it with shaking hands and didn't even have to scroll. The screen was open to a string of screenshots. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Then I saw the names. The group chat with my friends. The one we used to joke would be the reason one of us got in trouble one day. And there it was. A message from Jada, dated just a week ago. Oh my God, are we all just going to pretend Nina didn't risk it all for that bar hookup? It hit me like a punch. Underneath her message were more screenshots. Leanne making jokes. Rachel telling me to be careful. The three of them casually talking about what happened like it was just another funny night out. No filters, no code. Just straight up confirmation of everything I'd done, served in a perfectly laid out thread. I hadn't even replied when it happened. I remember that. I'd read it on a drive home from work. I didn't say a word in the chat because I was already paranoid. I didn't want to add fuel to anything, even in private. But staying silent clearly didn't help. At the end of the screenshots was a video, one I recognized immediately. I had watched it before. Saved it even. It was a clip of me and Luca at the bar, me leaning into him, laughing too hard. His hand sliding low across my back, the two of us leaning into each other. I knew what followed after the video were messages from Rachel talking about how she'd seen me sneak back into the hotel 2 nights in a row, looking disheveled and way too happy. And I knew that Corey would no doubt have already put the pieces together. I felt the blood drain from my face. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. My hands were cold, even though I was sweating. Corey stayed quiet for a long time, but I could feel that he was angry. It was the way he kept glaring at the floor, the way his jaw clenched every few seconds, the way he wouldn't look at me for too long like he might snap if he did. It was worse than if he'd screamed at me. Eventually he spoke, said he'd seen the messages the day before, that he didn't say anything right away because he wanted to be absolutely sure, that the past 24 hours had been him going back and forth in his head, trying to figure out if this was even worth saving, or if he should just walk away. I asked how he found the group chat in the first place. I remember how my voice came out small and strained. He said I'd left my phone unlocked in the kitchen. His mom had called earlier asking for a recent video of Tessa to send to one of her cousins. He didn't have any on his phone, so he picked up mine, thinking he'd find something quick to forward. What he found instead was a short clip wedged between birthday footage and videos of Tessa learning to ride her new bike. It was the one I'd saved, me and Luca being flirty and reckless and idiotic. He traced the video back to the chat and then he read everything, screenshotted it all, and sent it to himself. Then he sat with it in silence for a whole day while I went about mine like nothing had happened, worried about him not touching me like he used to when he'd already seen the worst of me. Then he said he was filing for divorce. Just like that. No, we need to talk about this. Or can we work through it? Just an already made decision. Like he wanted to be done with this. And me. As soon as possible. I barely even remember what I said. Just fragments. I remember begging before I even knew what I was begging for. Asking him to listen. Telling him it wasn't serious and it didn't mean anything. That it was just 2 nights and all a mistake. That I was stupid, but I still loved him. That I wasn't trying to hurt him. But none of it mattered. He didn't even blink. Didn't even acknowledge half of what I said. He just looked at me and said, "You already did." That was it, and it shut me up. Because I knew it was true. I had thrown it all away. 15 years of trust, of loyalty, of a life we built together. For what? For a couple nights in a hotel with a man who barely even knew me? I wanted to say it was just about the sex, that I just needed to feel wanted, that Corey and I hadn't been close in a while and that I made a bad call. But it wouldn't have changed anything. The damage was done. I'd done it. I stood there sobbing, while Corey barely even flinched. He didn't go out of his way to be cold to me. He was just kind of resigned and worn out. Like he had already grieved the loss of what we were, and now he just needed to get things over with. He told me the divorce papers would come soon, and that Tessa would be staying at his parents' for a few more days. That I could see her, sure, but I couldn't bring her into this or tell her any of it. Then he walked upstairs, came back down with his work bag and a smaller duffel. He didn't say anything else, just looked around the house one last time and quietly left. He closed the door behind him softly, and I stood there, still holding his phone, still staring at that frozen image of myself in another man's arms. I thought I could cheat and compartmentalize it, that I could get away with it. I'd hoped that I could come home, slip back into my life, and nothing would change. But everything changed. I've lost him. I'm about to lose everything else, and I have no one to blame but myself. To top it all off, losing Corey has made me realize just how much financial burden he was carrying. It has fallen on me now, and I can't keep up. I'm just a guidance counselor. I don't make enough to keep the house running or to significantly contribute to Tessa's needs. I'm drowning in bills and I have no idea what I'm going to do.